Three tails, old yin. Two tails, one head. Yin yang. Two tails, one head, yin yang. 2 heads, 1 tail, young yin. Two tails, 1 head, young yang. Two tails, 1 head, young yang. The bottom trigram or inner trigram of our primary hexagram will be read as broken, solid, solid. This is the trigram. Xun, wind or wood. Xun is both wind and living plants. Whatever penetrates, spreads and grows, shaping itself to the space available or shaping that space to its own nature. She is responsive flexibility, sensitively improvising and adapting. Like the wind, she can always find a way through because she never creates any resistance. And so her influence is subtle and gradual, but far-reaching. In the family of trigrams, Xun is the eldest daughter, gentle and submissive. She belongs to the southeast and to late spring and early summer. The top or outer trigram of our both hexagrams really, is going to be read as broken, solid, solid. This again is Xun, wind or wood. Xun, wind or wood. That's right. Literally just read it. Yes. So Xun, wind or wood above Xun, wind or wood give us a primary hexagram of 57. Our bottom trigram, the first line is an old yin. It will transform into a young yang to give us a bottom or inner trigram for our supporting hexagram of solid, solid, solid. This is Qian, heaven. Qian is superhuman cosmic law. Enduring, he determines the nature and development of all things, from the movement of the stars to the cycle of the seasons to causing each individual seed to grow into its own kind of plant. Heaven is creativity in its pure form, the force that drives change and what endures within it. He confronts us with truth and what it demands, both as the absolute law of nature and as the challenge of individual calling, experienced as an inner law. He is both the awareness of what to do and how to be, and also the power to act on it. Heaven is Father, found in the northwest, the realm between autumn and winter, when the buds set and seeds fall to earth. Xun, wind or wood, above Qian, heaven. Give us the supporting hexagram of 9. We will get the titles to our hexagrams from I-ming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. It is very alchemical-like in nature and substance. Hexagram 57, our primary hexagram, I-ming calls wind. Progress by flexible obedience. And supporting hexagram 9, we have Nurturance by the small, nurturing inner strength by outward submissiveness, being firm but not impetuous, growing through humility. We will start out by reading from Hilary Barrett's I Ching, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future, which is a nice introductory styled I Ching commentary. Our primary hexagram 57, Hilary Barrett calls, guessing it's going to be wind. Come on. Oh, subtly penetrating. Key questions. How can you get to know this from the inside? What is taking shape? Oracle. Subtly penetrating, creating small success, fruitful to have a direction to go, fruitful to see the great person. Subtly penetrating means becoming part of something or someone. It describes all-pervading influences like the wind shaping the landscape. You penetrate subtly by feeling your way into things, yielding gently to their nature. You shift your own ideas and expectations and come to understand the situation from inside, on its own terms. And so, as you allow things to shape you, you also reach a place where you can shape them. The old Chinese character for subtly penetrating shows a stand bearing the official seals of a ruler, seals a ruler would bestow on those he trusted. Someone who bows down and accepts a seal is submitting to the order of things, entering in and receiving his place within it. Then his seal, sign of personal authenticity, endows him with influence and the power to make his mark. Whatever penetrates subtly becomes influential. not by acting on situations or people to change their nature, but by becoming part of their nature and acting in them. Because it never acts as an antagonist, it never creates resistance and permeates everywhere. Such influence does not bring sudden transformations. It works imperceptibly in tiny increments, only creating small success. It is useful to align all these small shifts with a single intention that lends direction to the changes. And whether you see them in the flesh or with your inner eye, it's good to have a clear vision of the great person, a model of the larger possibilities implied by small success. In our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 9, Hilary Barrett calls small taming. When we approach the I-ming to consult the oracle, the question we bring to it is always going to have the general context of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. Key questions for small taming are supporting hexagram. What small thing can I work on today? How can I cultivate a better terrain? Oracle. Small taming, creating success. Dense clouds without rain come from my western altars. To tame is to restrain and also to accumulate and nurture. It's what the farmer does. Here, the small farmer cultivates the soil of his own small plot, hoping the offerings made at the western altars will bring rain. The Zhao people, like the clouds, came from the west. Before they were ready to receive the mandate of heaven and bring about change, they prepared for many decades, cultivating their society like earth. So a time of small taming brings great hope for future growth and success. It's just that at present, there's no rain, only clouds, and all they have brought so far is gloom. This means small restraint, the experience of small, frustrating setbacks and things that don't quite work yet. However, this also brings advice to cultivate the situation and yourself in small ways, developing your readiness and fitness just as a small farmer works the soil. You can't make things grow in a single gesture, and so you need self-restraint. You have to work steadily, responding conscientiously to the realities here at ground level, caring for the small details. Image. Wind moves above heaven, small taming. A noble one cultivates the natural pattern of character. The wind moves above heaven. It doesn't yet bring rain to earth. It is directed by the inner creative force of heaven, naturally moving with it. Inwardly, there are unchanging principles. Outwardly, your actions gradually take on the shape of those inner principles. This is self-cultivation that aligns you with a creative power. It concentrates on growing potential rather than bringing about results. Sequence. Small taming follows from hexagram 8, seeking union. Seeking union naturally has occasion to tame things, and so small taming follows. You have freely chosen where you belong and with whom, following your natural affinities. Now, if any of the potential you were drawn to is to be realized, you need to begin the detailed work. After the homesteader has entered virgin territory and chosen his own plot, he must get up next morning and every morning to work the soil, one weed at a time. Pair. Small taming forms a pair with hexagram 10, treading. Small taming is solitary. Treading does not come to rest. Seeking to relate to the power that will make greater things possible, first you prepare alone and learn its nature. Then you develop the capacity to move with it constantly. We'll go back to our primary hexagram and read our changing line 1. which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. It takes precedence over all other elements and is the most focused part of the reading. 57, subtly penetrating, changing line 1. Advancing, withdrawing, a warrior's constancy is fruitful. You try to enter and find your place, but you experience setbacks as well as progress. Sometimes the most adaptive, intelligent response is to withdraw. You can stay true to your chosen direction like a warrior who sees all advances and retreats in the context of a single purpose and is not discouraged. We will also read our Hexagrams and Changing line from I-ming's Taoist Te Ching that he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. Primary hexagram, wind. This is a nice alchemical translation, and anyway, especially towards the end where we get to the commentary stuff. Wind is small but developmental. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. It is beneficial to see a great person. Explanation. Wind is penetration and laying low, meaning gradually making progress by flexible obedience. In the body of the hexagram, one yin lies below 2 yangs, traveling the path of firmness by means of the path of flexibility. Not hurrying, yet not lagging, gradually progressing step by step. Obedient within and obedient without. Obedient below and obedient above. Going from near to far, rising from low to high, like the wind going farther and higher as it blows, reaching everywhere. Therefore, this is called wind. This hexagram represents progressing on the path of flexible obedience. It follows on the previous hexagram, richness. In richness, understanding and action are united so that one can deal with things adaptively, passive or active at will, essence and life depending on oneself and not on fate. However, the path of uniting understanding and action is not easily accomplished. It cannot be done without the work of gradual progress by flexible obedience. If one is flexible and obedient, one can endure long. By gradual progress, one can penetrate. Flexible obedience, making gradual progress, getting stronger with persistence, working without slacking off, will eventually arrive at deep attainment of self-realization. Therefore, wind is small but developmental. But though the ability to obey is a way of development, there are those who know about obedience but cannot practice it. There are those who can follow the low but not the high. There are those who can follow the high but not the low. There are those who can obey when it is pleasant but not when it is unpleasant. There are those who can obey in the beginning but not in the end. All of these are unable to really carry out the path of obedient progress. So even though they try to follow, if they do not get it, even though they try to follow it, they do not get through. When we look for obedience in which knowledge and action are both effective, firmness and flexibility are employed together, able to be above and below, competent in both ease and adversity, effective both inwardly and outwardly, unified from start to finish. We find that only great people with balance and right orientation are capable of this. Therefore, it is beneficial to have somewhere to go, and it is beneficial to see a great person. A great person considers essence and life important, considers the Tao and its qualities valuable, looks upon the ephemeral body as like a dead tree, looks upon wealth and status as like floating clouds, is inwardly always more than fulfilled while outwardly appearing insufficient, truly applies real practical steps, making gradual progress, mind firm and will far-reaching, determined not to rest until the great path is completed. Therefore, there is benefit. Those who are not great people cling to partiality. They obey and follow without balance or correct orientation. How can they get anywhere, to any benefit? So the benefit of going somewhere is only for the great person. Our supporting hexagram puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 9, Nurturance by the small. Nurturance by the small is developmental. Dense clouds do not rain, proceeding from one's own western province. Explanation. Nurturance by the small is making the small one's nourishment. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is wind, submissive, below is heaven, strong. Being strong yet acting submissively, the submissiveness subdues the strength, and strength cannot act on its own. Therefore it is called nurturance by the small, which also means being held back by the small. This hexagram represents nurturing the great by the small. It follows on the previous hexagram, army. The path of the army is using yang to repel yin, for which it is important to first nourish the yang. When one is able to nourish the yang, then one keeps to oneself by the small, full but not overflowing, firm but not aggressive, having yet appearing not to have, full yet seeming empty. The heart grows daily humbler, while the virtue grows daily higher. One can thereby gradually get to the realm of sages. This is why nurturance by the small is developmental. However, though nurturance by the small is developmental, if the smallness is excessive, this is doing things weakly, so that the path of firmness recedes from its proper place. The will is not robust, and one becomes feeble and ineffective. With the nurturance small, the development is small, so that the action is not far-reaching, and the great Tao is therefore hard to attain. This is like dense clouds not raining, proceeding from one's own western province. Yin energy coalesces as clouds, yang energy arrives as rain. As long as clouds do not rain, the yin energy is prevalent while the yang energy is weak, and the living potential is on the verge of cessation. That which is near in oneself is not even taken care of, so how could one seek that which is afar in the other? When one's small empty voidness enters into quietism, how can one restore one's celestial original state? So one must know the process of nurturance by the small. We will now read our changing line 1 of our primary hexagram 57. Yes, because 9 was small tame. Yeah. It puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places that you may find yourself. It takes precedence over all other elements and is the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 1 has its own general context, which is inklings just beginning to sense what could be involved or needed. Hexagram 57, changing line 1. Advancing and retreating, it is beneficial to be steadfast like a soldier. Explanation. When weak and hesitant, retreating as soon as one advances, one will never attain deeply. However, everyone has a share in the universal Tao. The only trouble is they lack will. If you can be determined and approach true teachers, seeking personal instruction, striving mightily with the steadfastness of a soldier, you can enter the Tao beneficially. This is obedience by which the weak borrow strength. We will also look at James Dekorne's Gnostic Book of Changes, which he has as a PDF online, and I've left links to it in the description box below. He is a practitioner of the Tao himself and has left helpful editor's notes as well as quotes from things like the Kabbalah. He calls hexagram 57, our primary hexagram, penetration. Other titles might be the gentle, the penetrating, wind, the symbol of bending to enter, willing submission, gentle penetration, ground, calculations, complacence, penetrating influence, the penetration of the wind, humility, devoted service, and submission, judgment, leg. Penetration indicates modest success. See the great man and move in the direction that implies. Blowfold, willing submission, success in small matters. It is advantageous to have in view a goal or destination and to visit a great man. This is a reasonably auspicious hexagram. It augurs a certain amount of success for those who submit to circumstances, unless a moving line indicating the contrary is received. This is not a time for resistance, but for submission. Ritzema/Karcher, ground, the small, growing, harvesting, possessing, directed, going, harvesting, visualizing great people. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of providing an underlying support. It emphasizes that subtly penetrating and nourishing things from below, the action of ground, is the adequate way to handle it. To be in accord with the time, you are told to enter the situation from below. The image. Leg. Two wind trigrams following each other form penetration. The superior man proclaims his commands and undertakes his work. Wilhelm/Baines, winds following one upon the other, the image of the gently penetrating. Thus the superior man spreads his commands abroad and carries out his undertakings. Blowfold, this hexagram symbolizes a favorable wind. The superior man performs his allotted tasks in consonance with heaven's, or the sovereign's will. The component trigrams combine the concepts of wind and blandness, hence a favorable wind. Commentary. Confucius/Leg. Repeated wind trigrams show the repetition of governmental orders. The dynamic fifth line has penetrated to his correct central place and carries his will into action. The magnetic first and fourth lines obey the dynamic lines above them. Hence it is said that there will be success in small matters. Leg. Penetration symbolizes both wind and wood, and has the attributes of docility, flexibility, and penetration. We are to think of it as wind with its penetrating power, which finds its way into every nook and cranny. Confucius said, "The relation between superiors and inferiors is like that between the wind and the grass. The grass must bend when the wind blows upon it." In accordance with this, the hexagram must be understood as the influence and orders of the government designed to remedy what is wrong in the people. The upper trigram denotes the orders issuing from the ruler, and the lower the obedience rendered to them by the people. Jiangsu says, superiors, in harmony with the duty of inferiors, issue their commands. Inferiors, in harmony with the wishes of their superiors, follow them. Above and below, there are that harmony and deference, and this is the significance of the redoubled wind trigram. When governmental commands in business are in accordance with what is right, they agree with the tendencies of the minds of the people who follow them. Anthony, getting this hexagram often refers to the presence of inferior elements that obstruct our having a good influence. Because this hexagram is concerned with self-correction, we often get it together with work on what has been spoiled. Hexagram 18, repair. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. Get to the heart of the matter and act on the information obtained. The superior man acts on his understanding by implementing it in the world. The hexagram of penetration, made up of two trigrams symbolizing wind, which is air in motion, suggests the activity of thought, the realm of air, trying to comprehend or penetrate something. Thus, each line of the figure may be seen as some aspect of an act of mental endeavor. A quote from Zhang Yi. Therefore, the student must exert his own mind to the utmost. If he does so, he will know his own nature. And if he knows his own nature, examines his own self, and makes it sincere, he becomes a sage. Therefore, the great Norm says, the virtue of thinking is penetration and profundity. Penetration and profundity lead to sageness. The first line depicts vacillation and indecisiveness. The second shows one trying to get to the bottom of a matter. Line 3 is an image of futile hypothesizing. 4 and 5 show two aspects of successful comprehension, and the sixth line symbolizes an inability to understand. A quote from Elizabeth Hayek in Initiation. Man's intellect, the greatest but most dangerous gift he has received from God, builds a bridge across the seemingly unconquerable chasm between that which is personal and mortal and that which is impersonal and eternal. Through man's intellect, he succumbed to the temptation to fall out of divine unity with his consciousness. But by the same token, his intellect gives him the possibility of bringing back his consciousness into full union with divinity. By means of his intellect, man is able to understand truth. And when he has understood, he will seek and keep on seeking and trying until he someday succeeds in finding the only path to the realization of his self. The hexagram can also symbolize humble submission and devoted service, thus suggesting the role of the ego in the work. To truly comprehend the nature of the work is to serve it with devotion. There are some interesting associations between the act of penetration and that of submission. When dynamic and magnetic are in full harmony, they lose their individual identities and become one force, which is both and neither. We will now turn to our supporting hexagram 9, which he calls passive restraint, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. I-ming called it Nurturance by the small. Other titles might be the taming power of the small, the symbol of small restraint, the lesser nourisher, taming the small powers, small accumulating, small harvest, small obstruction, nurturance by the small, restraint by the weak, restrained, minor restraint, the weak force, the force of the small, weak forces restrain strong forces. A quote from D.F. Hook. The restraint is small, success follows. Overcoming something small which is poisoning or nagging, partially relieving a situation, influencing that which one cannot change. Judgment. Leg. Passive restraint brings about progress and success. We see dense clouds but no rain coming from our western borders. Blowfold. The lesser nourisher, success. Dense clouds giving forth no rain approach from the western outskirts. On the whole, this hexagram presages good for us. The wind blowing across the heavens does not have the nourishing virtues of rain, but it refreshes us and makes us feel better. Thus, if things are going reasonably well with us, we may expect an improvement, especially in the future when presumably the nourishing rain will fall. However, as lines 3 and 6 indicate, if we are in serious trouble, we must not expect much help from the rather mild good fortune that is blowing our way. The conception of something weak or yielding bringing great benefit has been greatly developed by the Taoists who, as though they were familiar with judo, recognize the strength to be found in softness and the dangerous weakness sometimes occasioned by too much strength. The name of this hexagram, understood somewhat differently, may also be taken to mean that the time is propitious for undertaking additional activity or the care of the young. Lu, taming the small powers, success. Thick clouds come from the west, no rain. This situation symbolizes the preparation which precedes a new development. Ritzema/Karcher, small accumulating, growing. Shrouding clouds, not raining. Originating from my western suburbs. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of a variety of seemingly unconnected events and impulses. It emphasizes that retaining and hoarding these experiences through adapting to them is the adequate way to handle it. The image, leg. The image of the sky with the wind moving above it forms passive restraint. The superior man, in accordance with this, adorns the outward manifestation of his virtue. Wilhelm/Baines. The wind drives across heaven, the image of the taming power of the small. Thus, the superior man refines the outward aspect of his nature. Blofeld, this hexagram symbolizes wind blowing across the sky. The superior man displays his scholarly accomplishments. Lu, the wind blows across the sky, symbolizing taming the small powers. The superior man improves his ability and virtue. Ritzema/Karcher, wind moving above heaven, small accumulating. The Junzi uses highlighting the pattern to actualize Tao. And to actualize Tao is the ability to follow the course traced by the ongoing process of the cosmos, linked with acquire, D, acquiring that which makes a being become what it is meant to be. Clary, 1. Wind blowing up in the sky is small nurturance, thus do superior people beautify cultured qualities. Wu, the wind blows in the sky above. This is restraint of the small. Thus the Junzi refines his splendorous virtue. Commentary, Confucius/Leg. In the 9th hexagram, the magnetic line takes her proper place, and all the lines above and below obey her. Hence the name passive restraint. The figure is composed of the trigrams of strength plus flexibility. Dynamic lines occupy the central places, and their will is accomplished. This means progress and success. Dense clouds but no rain depict the advancing dynamic lines, but their source in the west shows that their beneficial influence has yet to be felt. Leg. The symbolism of the hexagram passive restraint is taken from the magnetic line in the 4th place, which holds all of the dynamic lines in restraint. This is because the 4th place is properly passive, magnetic, and the response of the other lines is therefore one of submission to her authority. The 2nd sentence of the judgment indicates the time and place of King Wen, whose homeland was the western portion of China in the 12th century BC. Rain coming and moistening the ground causes the luxuriant growth of the natural world, and symbolizes the blessings which flow from good government. Therefore, from the west, the hereditary territory of the legendary author of the I Ching, come the blessings which might enrich the whole kingdom. Here, however, they are somehow restrained. The dense clouds do not yet empty their stores. Zhang Su, Wang Feng, and other scholars say, in effect, dense clouds should give rain. That they exist without doing so shows the restraining influence of the hexagram at work. But the dynamic influence of the other lines still continues, and the rain will eventually fall. The wind moves in the sky and then ceases. It can restrain for a time, but not indefinitely. Clary 1. Being strong, yet acting submissively, the submissiveness subdues the strength, and strength cannot act on its own. The heart grows daily humbler, while the virtue grows daily higher. One can thereby gradually get to the realm of sages. This is why nurturance by the small is developmental. Clary 2. When you encounter situations that obstruct you and bog you down, if you do not get resentful or bitter, but just nurture yourself to digest them, you will be successful. Indeed, events and situations that formerly obstructed you can become means of self-development. This is how you succeed. This line indicates the value of not grabbing for easy success and the value of long-term results. Wu. Restraint of the small means literally small accumulation or small restraint. Small is another name for yin. Small accumulation or small restraint can also mean accumulation or restraint of the yin. When there are clouds but no rain, it means that something has intervened and prevented the cycle from completion. The judgment simply means many factors can derail a potential success, and we should weigh them carefully before making a decision. Anthony. Our influence is limited by the circumstances. We should avoid ambition to make progress, as this exerts a negative pressure on people. It also indicates that we do not yet trust our path of non-action or the power of truth to change the situation. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. Power is accumulated by gently withholding its expression. Gently withholding its expression. I'm going to read that again. Power is accumulated by gently withholding its expression. The superior man transforms his insights into components of his conscious will, or he works on his outer, conscious as opposed to inner unconscious awareness, or he lives his beliefs. Wilhelm's translation of the title of this hexagram is The Taming Power of the Small. I have substituted passive restraint as a phrase more compatible with contemporary English. The titles rendered by the other translators, in my opinion, do not convey the meaning of the hexagram. Lu's Taming the Small Powers even seems diametrically opposed to it, though it is obvious that the title has multiple meanings. In describing the action of the trigrams in this hexagram, Wilhelm conveys its essential meaning from lectures on the I Ching. The function of wind is to tame creative forces, to accumulate these and to make them visible. It is exceedingly difficult to understand this relationship of forces because the power used here is not expressed with might, but it is the softest, gentlest force imaginable. Wind is the least visible of all phenomena, and this invisible wind is now needed to concentrate that which strives upward, the strongest of all phenomena. The unconscious acts and creates as it must, and we should submit to the surgings of its waves. Only in the peripheral region, in the small free zone of consciousness, can work be taken up each day, and whatever needs refining can be refined. This is not superfluous work. Although this small zone of consciousness and freedom is only a thin rind, its contact with the forces of the unconscious is vigorous. Hence, that which is seemingly small and insignificant is, after all, the power that succeeds in taming chaos by means of steady work and perseverance. Lines 1 through 4 of the 9th hexagram show different forms of restraint during a time of building tension. The dark clouds are accumulating, and we know that eventually the rain will fall and the tension will be released. Rain always symbolizes a union between heaven and earth in the I Ching, which in turn means a synthesis of some sort. In the present instance, the synthesis is still building, and although the tension seems to demand action, we are counseled to remain still. The magnetic force must hold the overwhelming pressure of the dynamic forces in check. The 5th line depicts the focal point at which the forces are gathered, and the 6th line shows the restraint necessary to allow the new transformation to stabilize. If we turn the hexagram over, we get cautious advance, which depicts a different situation in which very careful action is called for. In the present instance, however, no action is correct action. A quote from Gershom Scholem in Kabbalah. Through the activity of divine providence, an abundance of blessing descends on the creatures. But this awakening of the power of providence is dependent on the deeds of created beings, on awakening from below. We will now look at our changing line 1 of our primary hexagram 57. Pardon me. which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places you may find yourself. It takes precedence over all other elements and is the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 1 has the general context of inklings just beginning to sense what could be involved or needed. Our primary hexagram penetration, 57. Changing line 1. Leg. The first line, magnetic, shows its subject now advancing, now retreating. It would be advantageous for her to have the firm correctness of a brave soldier. Wilhelm/Baines. In advancing and retreating, the perseverance of a warrior furthers. Blowfold. Advancing and retreating, the righteous persistence of the warriors brings advantage. Lu. Advance and retreat, it benefits the military person to be firm. Wu. There is hesitation, it will be advantageous to have the perseverance of a soldier. Commentary. Confucius/Leg. Her mind is perplexed. If she had the will of a brave soldier, her mind would be well governed. Wilhelm/Baines. The will wavers. The will is controlled. Blowfold. The first 3 words imply that we have doubts about our own intentions. The rest of the passage suggests a will firmly under control. Probably the implication is that we are now too hesitant and that we should benefit from acquiring the strong determination exhibited by soldiers in combat. Ritzema/Karcher. Purpose doubted indeed. Purpose regulated indeed. Clary 2. The mind is wavering. The mind is under control. Wu. Hesitation implies doubts in the mind. The perseverance of a soldier indicates a determination to carry out our orders. Leg. Line 1 is magnetic where it should be dynamic. Her movements are perplexed because she lacks vigor and decision. Notes and paraphrases. Sue. At the outset, the man is perplexed and drifts indecisively. A resolute military discipline is required of him. Wing. Do not be indecisive and perplexed. If you drift about with an undisciplined attitude, nothing can be influenced. Make a decision and stick to it. Editor. The image is of vacillation, indecisiveness, and lack of will. The only remedy is to assume our responsibilities to the work with the same will and spirit that we associate with the samurai warrior. A quote from Miyamoto Musashi in A Book of 5 Rings. Study strategy over the years and achieve the spirit of the warrior. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. James Dekorne breaks changing line 1 down into 3 possible succinct definitions, A, B, and C. A. Take a realistic, tough-minded approach to the matter at hand. B. Indecisiveness, uncertainty, anxiety, confusion. And C. Your question suggests a lack of commitment to the work. We'll now get a randomly card drawn chapter, verse rather, from the Tao Te Ching. And in the meantime, I'll try and sum this puppy up. So our primary hexagram 57, wind, shows kind of like an inner going back and forth, especially with our changing line, of trying to get to the heart of a matter. And probably, I think the idea of wind blowing all over the place and vacillation, I think, was one of the things in the changing line that it was talking about. So that's the main primary hexagram. And then Nurturance by the small hexagram 9 shows, instead of both trigrams being that of wind, the bottom one is heaven, Qian. And this shows a strength of heaven beneath kind of a weakness or flexibility of the wind. the magnetic line 4 is the only magnetic line in our supporting hexagram. And in it, it talked about all of the other lines, the dynamic lines, submitting to her because she was in her correct place. It felt as if there was a rising. It talked about the bottom trigram being similar to like the unconscious pushing upward, and the control we have with our consciousness is restraining that, and it's being called weak. The wind being weak over the heaven strength. So there seemed to be a lot of responsibility put on us in our conscious states to further the work and do what is possible to continue to have flexibility with being able to rise to any position or go to any lower position. At will. It talked about, I can't recall if it was that line or that hexagram or the first one, but it's coming to mind. It had the idea that some people are able to be only in situations where they're high, and some people can only do it when they're low. Practice the Tao when they're low, or practice their Tao when they're high. But it's important to be able to be flexible, and like the wind, and be able to adapt. And also with a pressure from the unconscious, the idea of firm correctness with flexibility is implied, I believe, here. And then getting to our changing line 1, it showed a soldier that didn't know whether to advance or retreat, essentially. And so there was vacillation going back and forth. And so in that sense, it was not a good time to act. There was something that I liked a lot from the primary hexagram that I think I'd like to read with this. And in that changing line as well, it says, take a realistic, tough-minded approach to the matter at hand. Your question suggests a lack of commitment to the work and indecisiveness, uncertainty, anxiety, and confusion. So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on. It was this one. Here we go, this quote. As from Wilhelm in his lectures on the I Ching. This is for our hexagram, our supporting hexagram 9, Nurturance by the Small, or Taming the Small Powers. He says, the function of the wind is to tame creative forces, to accumulate these and to make them visible. It is exceedingly difficult to understand this relationship of forces because the power used here is not expressed with might, but it is the softest, gentlest force imaginable. Wind is the least visible of all phenomena, and this invisible wind is now needed to concentrate that which strives upward, the strongest of all phenomena. The unconscious acts and creates as it must, and we should submit to the surgings of its waves. Only in the peripheral region, in the small free zone of consciousness, can work be taken up each day, and whatever needs refining can be refined. This is not superfluous work. Although this small zone of consciousness and freedom is only a thin rind, its contact with the forces of the unconscious is vigorous. Hence that which is seemingly small and insignificant is after all the power that succeeds in taming chaos by means of steady work and perseverance. Yeah, lots of wind going on here. All of the trigrams were wind except for in our when our changing line changed on our support, giving us a supporting hexagram, and that changed wind to heaven. wind, the trigram wind, is subtle and penetrating, and it maybe has a very minor influence at first, but over time it has great results because it doesn't cause any resistance, and it's able to go through any crevice and permeate everything. While we are in a time of uncertainty, maybe, and anxiety because of our changing line 1, it says a soldier not knowing whether or not to attack or retreat, essentially. What power we do have given to us by our supporting hexagram, that quote there shows that the weak amount of influence that we have with our consciousness over our unconscious, which exerts a tremendous influence on everything that we do, we can hone it and take things responsibly like a soldier, and put vigorous effort and focus into the work at hand, that being the great work, right? The alchemical workshop, the culling of the fire to gather and build up the gold elixir. That process is something that is precious and could slip from us if we are not careful. So it is good to have in mind, that was something that was talked about too, the idea of the sage or the great person, and keeping that in focus with us, and that being something that can pull us through and give us maybe some motivation to have what we focus on with our consciousness and our waking lives be something that can help regulate the feeling of this building of energy beneath this weak factor above of the consciousness. It talked about rain coming with the clouds building and them being kind of just gloom for us right now because there's no rain. That pressure, we are to kind of like deal with the pressure without acting on it. And rain eventually will follow, which is a blessing. And it's something that we can have in the future, but at the present moment, especially in our position of being like a soldier, not knowing whether to attack or retreat, it is important to do the best to figure out what we can focus on in our conscious waking lives that will better help us, like with the example of the sage, to, when we are uncertain, still remain in control, in the sense of not being overwhelmed by the forces of the unconscious to act in any particular way, but to really hold the line, so to speak, while that pressure builds, knowing that in the future there is the promise of rain. We're going to read verse 77. I've been calling them chapters this whole time, and then I watched Benabel Wen, who I've been putting a bunch of her videos in my community page as of late, but she said they were verses, and I trust her. So we will read it, verse 77 out of the Tao Te Ching, which my copy is from Jia Fu Fang and Jane English. Verse 77 of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao of heaven is like the bending of a bow. The high is lowered and the low is raised. If the string is too long, it is shortened. If there is not enough, it is made longer. The Tao of heaven is to take from those who have too much and give to those who do not have enough. Man's way is different. He takes from those who do not have enough to give to those who already have too much. What man has more than enough and gives it to the world? Only the man of Tao. Therefore the sage works without recognition. He achieves what has to be done without dwelling on it. He does not try to show his knowledge.